I'm Eugene Chandrov. I'm the game designer. And we are going to go ahead and start. My co-founder unfortunately isn't here yet. He might be able to make it later. And while we are waiting for some comments, I will go ahead and update you guys about the Kickstarter. It's been going slowly. Our goal was 8,000 and we've hit 2,000 so far. Thank you to all of our backers who have pledged so far. We are going to see how the rest of this campaign goes, but it's starting to look like we're probably going to need to do a relaunch. That's something that we're going to be doing around October 21st, but more details on that are going to be coming later. Oh, hi Chris, how's it going? I am at 1789. It is a venture firm at UNC Chapel Hill. Yes, there's a lot of different sort of entrepreneurial activities going on here. Hi Chris. It's good to see the two of you here. Chris and Chris. Yes, this is at UNC Chapel Hill. It is the university that I graduated from a year ago, and they have a area for entrepreneurs to come and sort of talk about their ventures and talk to other entrepreneurs as well. Yeah. Alright, so Chris and Chris, if either of you have any questions for me, fire away. Actually recently responded to Tom Gerganis. He had a great list of questions for me. Let's see here. Oh yeah, no problem, man. Understand if you need to multitask. Let's see. Yeah, Tom had some great questions about both the game and the company, because the company is pretty new. We actually incorporated submit the paperwork for it April 1st, so we're definitely very new. But I've been looking into how to do Kickstarter for quite a while. But yeah, if you have any questions, please fire away. Oh no, sorry Chris Beach, I have not seen Brawlin' Brothers. I will look into that and see what it's like. Yeah, Chris, if we don't make it to the end this time around, we're going to do a lower goal and do a print-on-demand version of the game. Then if we hit around 5,000, then we'll do a full print run. We're organizing for a relaunch, which will be probably around October 21st, and we're actually only going to do 2 weeks. I think that'll be more than enough time for us to actually get everything done that we need. Alright, aside from the Cold War, what is the most interesting war in your opinion? From Chris Beach. Oh man, there's a lot of really interesting wars, honestly. The Warring States period in Japan is very interesting. Honestly, a lot of the historical wars that I know about are thanks to extra credits. They do historical segments, and of course World War II. I used to love watching the History Channel that was essentially World War II, the channel, for a long time, so that was always fun to watch. Let's see. Question number 2 from Chris Peach. If you could make an actual war game about a war, fictional or otherwise, what would it be? Let's see. World War II is a good option, but it's been done a lot. World War I might be a good one. It's hard to really do trench warfare justice because that's a really awkward and awful thing, because honestly, from a gameplay perspective it's really boring, and from a human perspective it was just very sad. But if it's like a war game about World War I would definitely be more on the strategic level than on the tactical level. Or possibly if you're researching technological innovations for the First World War, that would be an interesting game, although that definitely wouldn't be a war game. There's a lot of unexplored periods in history. I think a lot of war games set more in the Age of Sail, 1500s to 1700s, that involved having a fleet, and naval engagements would be interesting. There's a few games about that, but not a whole lot. And Chris Peach is also talking about the Designer's Corner. That is it's a very nice little, little but getting bigger group of designers getting together and talking about self-publishing and their plans for the future and game design. It's a lot of fun. What time period are you calling dibs on? The 15 to 1700s? Let's see. Okay, a lot of questions all of a sudden. So did you see Jamie Stegmeyer's post about what percentage of backers came from what sources? Chris, no, I did not see that, unfortunately. That definitely sounds interesting. I'll go and take a look at it. Board Game Geek is definitely an important source for that, but it's very expensive to put ads up on that website. So that's something that I will look into later on, I think. Chris, I don't remember you calling dibs on the Age of Sail to make a miniatures game. Although maybe that came up in the designers meeting that I couldn't make it to. That's definitely an interesting period. See. Chris Carroll is talking about, I always think topical things do well. I'm watching a documentary about U.S. military veterans who volunteered to fight for Israel in 1948. Yeah, that's interesting, but, well, my first game is also very much politically charged, but yeah, I wonder what the reaction and what sort of really market there is for a game like that, but that would definitely be an interesting game to try to do. Alright, Chris can take a look at it, although calling dibs on an entire period of history is kind of silly. Oh. Yeah. Chris Carroll's right. Yeah, the Americans helping out with Israel's Air Force. There's a lot of really interesting periods of history. It's honestly a lot of there's so many different periods of history that really don't have any games about them. So really sticking to just World War II, World War I is maybe not as interesting. There's so much out there. I mean, different nations fights for independence. Just Israel. You could do a series of games about Israel and the Arab countries around it. There have been so many wars. Let's see, the 7 Days War. That would be an interesting one to do it on. Yeah. Academy Games, they do a really good job of making games with historical themes. I look up to them a lot, actually. They, both from a business standpoint and from the sort of games that they make, they try really hard to make sure that they, have some interesting history in their games, but it's also fun to play. So, there's my little plug for who I like in terms of other publishers. Yeah, I'd like to make. I really do want to make games that have some sort of historical theme to them. Or not just historical, historical or scientific. I like games that the theme gets you interested in a subject that you might not necessarily have been interested beforehand. That's something that I think is really cool. Yeah, Chris Carroll is talking about Israelis buy more games printed in English than anyone besides the Germans. It's an interesting statistics. Is that excluding the U.S. and the U.K.? Okay, cool. U.S., U.K., Germany, Israel. Yeah, that's interesting. Chris actually, I'm going to give Chris Carroll a shout out here. Actually, he has done a lot of study on how different companies work in the game business. And I want to give Chris Peach a big shout out for spending a lot of time researching not just publishing and Kickstarter game publishing, but also figuring out how to make nice and cheap, well, relatively cheap, miniatures-based games. So we'll be seeing Hunters in October as well. That'll be his next launch, which will also be interesting to see. It's a cool art style. It's a big box game. It'll be interesting to see how it does. Chris had an interesting point in an earlier designer talk that the suggestion has always been to start with a smaller game and then do larger games as you get more experience. But the people who give this advice actually started with mid-weight Euros or other larger games. So, that seems to be advice that really should be taken with a grain of salt. I'm more and more of the opinion that you should be making the games that you want to make and just figure out how to bring that to your audience most effectively. Yeah, sorry. I'm also recovering from a cold that I had last weekend. 'Tis the season to be. Yeah. Yes, Chris Beach is right. All advice needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Some more, some less, but everyone does things differently, so figure out what works for you. Chris Peach asks, how do you as a designer feel about turtles? Well, Chris, as you know, the next game that I'm working on after Comrades and Patriots is called working title Sea Turtles Scurry. It's going to be a game about playing as a baby sea turtle that has just hatched and is trying to get to the ocean, and every turn you draw 2 cards, and you can either play one as an action or multiple cards to scurry, which is just movement. And if you scurry, you get to place tiles which get everyone closer to the shore, so everyone's trying to kind of jockey for position to try to get to the ocean before everybody else does. But a lot of the cards help out all of the players or just help you out, so it's very different from the Cold War game. There's a lot less backstabbing, there's a little bit of sort of cooperation, and everyone's building the map together. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's this time around has been very informative for us. So this Kickstarter, we'll see how it ends. The chances of funding are very, very low. But it is, it's definitely been a great learning experience. We have learned a lot, like communicating better, letting people know when we have events like this well ahead of time, just organizing better, and making sure that our Kickstarter page was pretty well laid out, but some people may have not gotten the message that we wanted to bring across. I think that with the lower goal, we'll definitely be able to make it, and yeah, this was, like I said, this was our first time around. We're getting a little bit more awareness now, I think. So we'll see how the second time around goes. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of projects in the works. There's a couple of dexterity games that I made for the Greater Than Games Dexterity Challenge. Those are going to be it's going to be interesting to see if they do anything with them, because if they don't, then we might publish them ourselves. Chris Peach is asking, as a designer, how do I feel about the growing number of reviewers in the industry? I'll be honest, when I was sending out review copies, I didn't do as much research as I probably should have. I got some good connections, and I got some people who did good reviews. I mean, in terms of quality, not in terms of praising the game, although people like the game, which is great. But I could have used reviews from some better known reviewers. That's not something I think we're going to really be able to change for Comrades and Patriots, but for Turtles, I'm going to look into sort of the larger reviewers, like Richard Ham and Lance from Undead Viking, Nick from Board Game Brawl. I'm going to definitely contact them about the Turtle game. That's something that, it's Let's Take That. I think it's a little more interesting. Let's see, so Chris Peach had some more questions. How do I feel about the growing number of companies launching on Kickstarter? And do I feel like there are too many requirements by the community for my Kickstarter because of advice from established companies like Jamie Stegmaier's and James Matthews' companies? I think they give good general advice. Essentially, it's gone to the point where having a good Kickstarter page is no longer enough. You really do have to bring your own crowd. It's definitely a very crowded space, especially for smaller games. It's easy for something like a game like ours to get lost sort of among the noise, which is, I mean, it's unfortunate, but essentially it means that we need to be better about our community outreach, or have smaller Kickstarters, and sort of accept the fact that it'll take some time for us to organically grow our fan base. And that, I think, is the strategy that we're going to go for. We're going to slow it down a little bit and keep releasing games and keep designing and doing art and publishing games, but making sure that we can make the games with a very low funding goal. Essentially, seeing what our bare minimum, bare bones Kickstarter is, and then going from there. What we were trying to do with this one was what I would call a middle of the road Kickstarter, because $8,000 would have funded sort of a full big box, well, not big box, but full box version of the game, with a print run of 1,000 units, enough money to actually ship it everywhere that it needs to be shipped. This way we're going to need to do a print-on-demand goal and move from there. No, Chris, I don't think we're just going to pay for more marketing. Paid marketing does not do as well as organic marketing, so I think we're just going to work on releasing more games. Let's see, the thread has gotten longer. Let's see. Yes, there is definitely some Kickstarter fatigue going on. I agree with Chris Carroll about that. And, well, Chris Peach, you know, we gotta, we'll see. They do have a lot of, a lot of their general advice is very useful, and I think Jamie's advice on building a following is also helpful, but probably a lot of their specifics are not necessarily as useful. I know Jamie has been having issues with Amazon, which I know he stopped selling through Amazon himself, which I suppose he can focus on. Let's see. Yes, Chris Peach is right. A lot of what they talk about is basic knowledge of marketing, but a lot of designers who want to self-publish aren't very good at understanding marketing. I know Chris Peach's answer to this is going to be essentially, if you don't know how to market your products, then you shouldn't be on Kickstarter, which has a grain of truth to it, I suppose, but it's still, I think it's useful that they spell it out. So it can be helpful. Yeah, actually, speaking to Kickstarter fatigue, that seems to crop up on Board Game Geek a lot, and on the Board Game Geek Facebook page, so essentially the fatigue is coming from these are just regular glasses that I got from Walmart. That is a very that's a very silly question. Trying to derail me. But yeah, I think Kickstarter fatigue is a problem for people who have been aware of Kickstarter for, you know, the last 6 years. But a lot of people, in fact, even a large portion of my friend group, don't really know a lot about Kickstarter. So I think that educating people is still valuable. It's still something that's necessary to do. It's just that if you're a publisher, then at this point, you need to get past the basics of just understanding how does Kickstarter work and what do you need to do to have a good-looking Kickstarter. You also need to understand sort of what is your market, what is the market segment that you are going for, and how do you reach out to that market segment. So this is much more businessy and much more in depth than a lot of what the advice that you see on the more common, uh, well-known threads about kickstarting games is. It's, yeah, it's definitely a problem. It's too bad that I wasn't where I am now 4 years ago before Kickstarter fatigue set in. But, you know, you play the hand you're dealt, unfortunately. Yeah. Chris Carroll, what do you mean by 25% success rate? Do you mean that the projects that you've backed are having trouble succeeding? Because it's definitely interesting to see that some Kickstarters, it seems that there's still sort of the Kickstarters that blow up, but it's from well-known brands. But in general, as Chris Peach is saying, Kickstarters are averaging less money now. There's a lot of factors, but essentially there's a lot more projects out there, and the base of people on Kickstarter is growing, but I think it is growing slower than the number of projects being launched. So overall, there is less money going to more projects, which means that it's leveling out how much money the projects that aren't runaway successes are getting. Oh, sorry. They were averaging less money. Okay. Yeah, the really successful projects are definitely making more money, but I need to go back and look at the statistics, but it seems like it's harder to get funded if you're not someone with, essentially an audience that is ready to come in and back you on the very first day. And I mean, Chris Peach, that's something that you talked about as well, that you have enough people lined up that you want to get about, you said 70% funded within the first week. And I think sort of if you do that, then you're probably going to overfund by 200, maybe 300%. I guess I'm kind of throwing those percentages just out there, but based on the projects that I've looked into, that does seem to be sort of how it's going to go. Okay, Chris Carroll makes an interesting point that there was a bubble in participation, not in games, but in the number of people participating because Kickstarter got popular. But the more serious investors are the ones that are staying around. And I think there's some truth to that. There are people who just continuously back Kickstarters, and then people who go and back something like Exploding Kittens, for example. I'm curious, people talk about the barrier to entry is creating the Kickstarter account, and then once someone has backed a project, like a mega project like Exploding Kittens, they're much more likely to come back and back more projects. And I would be curious to see the data for that. I'm not sure. There might be some way to parse that. If you look at the month during which Exploding Kittens was out, and then look at backer history, that might be something interesting to look at for whether they backed anything afterwards. I will be back in 1 second. I need to let someone in. Sorry guys, I'm back. Yeah, James and Jamie have a lot of data that they do a lot of data mining, but there's some other people that have been doing some data mining lately. That's something that I want to do some more of myself as well. You know, I have a background in psychology, so I do enjoy statistics. I just haven't had a chance to dig into the data with my Kickstarter campaign and working on the games, unfortunately.
The thing is, then all I have to do is go through. The thing is, go through your friends by like UNC, and then
Yeah. I will admit that it is strange that James Math has. What's strange to me is that his fan base, his company's fan base, has not been growing from Kickstarter to Kickstarter. It has essentially stayed the same for quite a while now, which is kind of weird. That's interesting. Chris Beach always has a unique perspective to give on where to go to find our information, which I think is awesome. Like I said, I think James and Jamie have a lot of useful information for the beginning, but Chris is right that there are other places that you can look for information once you've sort of made the first hurdle. And I wonder how many people there really are out there that are interested in launching a publishing company using Kickstarter to crowdfund games. That's a very specific sorry, it's a very specific sort of thing to do. I'll be right back again, sorry.
No, it's good. It's good because the thing is, it gives me a reason to get on the path.
Carol, we're still alive, and it seems that it's going to go. The stream was actually holding up this time around. No one came.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know how that is. Nobody came to my art thing except for my friends.
Yeah.
You know, even people who like said they were coming on Facebook, or
Yeah.
people who told me they were gonna come, didn't come.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
It's
Les.
just like people are unreliable.
Yeah. So Charlie, my co-founder, is here. He's going to be able to talk to us a little bit more about his perspective. But by the way, yes, one more thing about lessons learned. We need to get better about organizing events and just letting people know
To those watching,
that the events.
probably organizing at least a week in advance.
Yes.
Idea.
Yeah, organizing at least a week in advance is a good idea, and just generally having a Facebook event
And reminding.
and just letting people know that the event is happening, because yeah, people often will not know. Can you sit here so that you're
Sure.
on camera? Because I'm sure that Chris and Chris are going to have questions for you as well.
Libby's eating at Banditos.
I see.
My friend.
Gotcha. So yes, everyone say
I can tell
hello.
everybody about my adventure afterwards.
Yes, you
If
can.
they wanted to hear about it, it'd be interesting. It has nothing to do with card games and art, though.
Yeah. People can be unreliable.
Yeah.
Um,
that's nice.
but anyways, yeah. So
Hey,
guys,
look, just sat down in the stream.
Yeah. So this is Charlie.
This is
Uh,
Charlie.
He is
In case
my
you haven't seen
co-founder.
me before.
Yes. He is my co-founder, and he did the awesome art
Yeah.
on all of the cards. So, so yeah, he is the other half of This and That Games. Yes. Is Charlie married?
I am married. I'm
It's-
taken.
If so, what does his missus think about his art? What does your missus
She
think about
likes
your
my
art?
art. We actually met in a drawing class, and she originally was focused on art too, but now she's focused on. Well, now she has a job in like a library system. So in college, she ended up focusing on information sciences and technological, complicated things.
Yeah.
Well, I focused on art things.
Yeah. And she works at the university now.
And she works at the university.
So do you.
And so do I.
yeah. Yeah, lots of connections to UNC.
Yeah. But yeah, she likes my art. And she's actually really good too. She's just hasn't had the practice that I have.
Let's see. So Chris Carroll is asking, for him, the fan base thing is going to be the hardest part. As a percentage of the work that we've done, what would we say the communications took?
Honestly, it's probably would take it a whole lot.
Yeah,
That seems to be like the biggest challenge. 'Cause,
communication is.
like Eugene knows he can do game design, and I know I can make art. But like growing the fan base and trying to get the public interested is probably like
Yeah.
the biggest challenge because it's unknown.
Yeah, like how people respond to what you do.
Especially since I'm not like the most. I'm not the biggest social butterfly in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big social butterfly, but like honestly, Kickstarter is draining. Just because you have to be constantly putting yourself out there, and even like whatever you do, it's never really enough. There's always more that you can be doing. Actually, that part at least is a lot like design. You know, a game is never finished. At some point, you just decide that if you keep fiddling with it, you're going to start breaking things instead of making it better.
You should tell them. I don't know if you already said this, but the thing you said about how like there's things that we found out about later
Yeah.
that we realized that we should have been doing like day one or before it started.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, like a lot of the stuff that we've been doing throughout the campaign, we should have been doing right from the beginning. So,
Or like just do it all like if we're fair.
yeah, like we're gonna have a bunch of Facebook events lined up beforehand. We're going to have a plan for all of our social media marketing throughout the campaign. So we're always going to know what we need to do. And this is something again that Jamie Stegmeyer talked about. And again, this is more general advice, but like we had a plan and we did a lot of the things that we talked about for social media outreach, but a lot of it we did a lot later in the campaign than we should have. And Chris Peach is asking, as an illustrator and graphic designer, which do you prefer doing and why?
I prefer illustrating, but it's interesting because they're both really different. They're time consuming for different reasons sometimes. Because usually, like a lot of things I've done, I've always tried to make things really complex. But usually with graphic design, it usually works better to make things simple. But it needs to look good while being simple, so it can still take a lot of time. But yeah, I'm definitely more of an illustrator than a graphic designer by far. It's not really a competition.
Yeah. Let's see.
Agreed on these days.
Oh. Chris says that he found that if he puts on his boss hat, tries to tell the creators about how much fan base building or selling they need to do, that discourages them. That's definitely something that a lot of people to think about. That's something that people need to think about. If you're going to be self-publishing, you need to know how to sell your games, because you're going to have to do that. And you're going to be the only one that really will be doing that. No one sells your games better than you. Remember that. So Chris Peach asks, Charlie, is Eugene fun to work with, and would you hang out with him at conventions? I'm thinking about hanging out with him at conventions, but he has submitted no referrals.
What does he mean by he submitted no referrals?
I have no references. Yes, I have no references about whether I'm fun to speak with at conventions. Well, Chris, if you ask Duncan Davis or Gil Hova, I've hung out with them.
If you are, I'm assuming since you're watching the stream, you're interested in board games and card games.
He's a fellow designer
and
and
gaming and design.
Yeah.
Then you'll probably enjoy hanging out with Eugene, because that's basically what he lives and breathes right now. So yeah. But yeah, like casually hanging out with Eugene is fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we gotta like get hard to work, that can be hard, but that's just because that's how it is.
Yeah, that's life. Can't always have fun. Have to work on stuff a lot of the time.
No characters can vouch for him. What does that mean?
I honestly have no idea.
I guess you haven't had any characters.
You're being very silly now, Chris, but fair enough. Yeah, what's your favorite
I like
type
Hawaiian
of pizza?
pizza. I'm not gonna lie. Some people hate it, but I love Hawaiian pizza.
Hawaiian's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like pineapple and pizza.
Meat lovers for me. I like me some meat on my pizza. All right, cool.
What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Yeah, Chris Peach, what kind of pizza do you like? Let's turn it back over to the viewers.
I want to hear the voice of the people.
Yes. Let's see, Chris Carroll is asking, what gaming clubs do you guys hang out with? How do you find groups to game with? So, like, mainly your friends.
For me, it's just friends, people I've known in college. That's basically it.
Yeah.
I know you organized a gaming group.
Yes.
At UNC.
Yeah, Chris, I work on I started a game club here at UNC Chapel Hill.
That's okay.
Alright. Yes, it's okay. Chris Peach cannot be friends with a fruit lover. Sorry, Charlie. But yeah, there's a game group at NC State that I like to go to and play test with, and sometimes just casually play games. And I started a group at UNC Chapel Hill, and also have my friend group from high school who actually started playing board games with. So I've got 3 different game groups that I hang out with sometimes. Sorry. All right. Well, I think this. Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions? They don't have to be related to anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do a last call for questions. Chris Carroll has been joining some random local groups with a local Facebook presence. He is a member of a politically active atheist group that games regularly.
That's cool.
Chris, you have joined some very interesting groups, both on Facebook and in person.
Yeah, he does have a bit of a presence on Facebook.
Yeah, so
I see him in every gaming-related group I see.
Yeah. Chris Peace, sorry about the background noise. I think it's just a friendly match. No one's winning right now. And yeah, maybe
Set the fans.
yeah, maybe we can. Our friends have been helping us out with that.
Yeah, they've helped with playtesting and
Playtesting
helping out
especially.
with the videos.
Having a bunch of playtest groups has been useful. Meetup.com is a good resource for looking into that.
It is legit. Ping
Yeah.
pong is a lot of fun.
Ping pong's a lot of fun to watch, definitely. And play. I enjoy playing ping pong.
Did you tell them about our future plans for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and
We're gonna relaunch the Kickstarter.
yeah, on October
for the-
21st.
Yep. And then we plan to have another game later. It's also a smaller game.
But yeah, Chris Beach, I think you're right. Using Meetup.com to find some local game groups to try out the game and maybe back the Kickstarter. I think that's definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
That's something I'll definitely try
It'd be
out.
interesting to see if there's others that, because I know Eugene's
There's
looked into like every game group that at least you can like publicly find out about.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know how much we've used Meetup.
Meetup.com has a lot of private groups, so that's something that I haven't looked into as much, but it's definitely something that's good to think about. Yeah, thanks for the tip, Chris. That's a good idea. And Chris Carroll's asking about business-oriented groups on campus. That's actually where we are right now.
Yeah.
1789 is an entrepreneurship organization on campus that helps students. They're definitely a potentially useful organization. Not that many gamers, though, unfortunately, as we found out today.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people knew about our event.
Because this area, the Research Triangle, like in the east, not counting like the north, is kind of where there's a lot of like focus on like games, game companies, and game development. At least like in some ways.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of focus at UNC on it. I think NC State does have some programs.
They do.
But, yeah.
Alright, well, I think this has been a good stream. We actually were planning doing 7:30 to 8, but we wanted to give we wanted to have Charlie answer some questions as well. But I think if no one has any major questions left, we're probably going to sign off soon.
It would be.
Yeah. But yeah, lots of good information here. Good advice. Thanks, guys. And thanks for tuning into the stream. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
It's always good to have people ask intelligent questions. And we have talked to some departments, but we haven't. We've gotten some response, but not a great deal. So we're gonna keep working at it. Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been great. See you around.
See ya.
Bye.